My name is Margot C. Stickle, and I am 35 years old. I'm sitting in my empty house with the kids' toys still scattered across the living room rug, trying to process what just happened because my boyfriend, Damien, 33, just tried to take our children and disappear, and my lawyer used a word I never thought I'd hear attached to my life: kidnapping. We've been together 9 years. Not married on paper, but married in every way that mattered. Shared bills, shared routines, shared exhaustion. 2 kids. Nova is 7 and Miles is 5. I work in logistics management and make around $85,000 a year. Damien works part-time as a dental assistant, brings in maybe 30. We weren't wealthy, but we managed, or more accurately, I managed, and we floated on my stability. Things have been rocky for about a year. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I work long hours. I probably don't help enough at home. I miss school emails sometimes. We were in counseling, or at least I thought we were, doing the whole scheduled conversations, progress charts, use I statements routine that makes you feel like your relationship is a broken appliance you're trying to troubleshoot. Yesterday morning, I woke up to the sound of zippers, heavy zippers, suitcases being dragged across hardwood. When I walked into the hallway, Damien was packing the kids' stuff like we were evacuating: clothes, shoes, favorite toys, Nova's sketchbook, Miles's blanket. It was too organized to be spontaneous. He didn't even look at me when I asked what was going on. "I'm taking the kids to my mother's for the weekend," he said, voice flat. "For the weekend," I repeated, because my brain needed something to hold on to. He finally turned and looked at me, cold as ice. "For good. This isn't working. The kids need stability." I remember how my stomach dropped, not because I didn't see our problems, but because he was speaking like a judge delivering a ruling. "We need to talk about this," I said. "You can't just decide that." "There's nothing to talk about," he replied. "I'm their father. I know what's best. Don't follow us." I stared at him, waiting for the part where he admitted he was panicking or bluffing. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Watch me, and don't try anything stupid. My mom's girlfriend is a cop." That was the first moment I realized he was building a story in real time, tossing out intimidating details to make me freeze. His mother lived 400 miles away in another state. The cop girlfriend was actually a mall security guard, but he said it like it was a badge and a gun and a guarantee. He wanted me scared. He wanted me still. Nova ran into the room, excited, already caught in his energy. "Mom, we're going to Grandma's," she said like it was a surprise gift. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to stay calm. "That's nice, sweetheart." I kissed her forehead. I hugged Miles and told him I loved him. He smelled like sleep and toothpaste. Damien watched me like he expected me to explode, to scream, to give him the reaction he could use later as proof that I was unstable. Instead, I stepped back and let him carry the bags out. He loaded the kids into the SUV, buckled them in, adjusted Nova's jacket like he was a model parent, then turned to me one last time. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said. I looked him in the eye and said the only words that kept my children safe in that moment. "Drive safe." He actually smirked, like he couldn't believe I was letting him win. The second his car turned the corner, I called my lawyer. Not the nice family attorney who helped me draft a will when Nova was born, but the aggressive one a coworker recommended, with the kind of reverence people reserve for surgeons and sharks. Her name was Denise Morrison, and she didn't let me ramble. "He took the kids," I said. "He says he's not coming back." "Stop," Denise cut in. "Where is he going?" "His mother's, another state." "Are you married?" "No." "Doesn't matter. You have equal parental rights. Get to my office now. Bring every financial document you can access. Bank logins, account numbers, credit cards, everything. Do not text him. Do not threaten him. We're filing." Within 2 hours, we had filed an emergency custody motion, a parental kidnapping report, and a motion to freeze joint assets. Denise explained it like she was reading weather conditions. If he's running, he's going to drain accounts. We stop that. If he crosses state lines without a custody agreement, we document it. We control the narrative with facts, not emotion. A judge signed the asset freeze immediately. Joint checking, frozen. Joint savings, frozen. Credit cards, tied to joint auto pay, suspended. Denise looked at me and asked the question that made my stomach twist. "Is his personal card paid from the joint checking?" "Yes," I said, "auto pay always." "Then it's frozen too," she said. "He'll find out when he tries to use it." 3 hours after he left, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered because I already knew who it was. "What did you do?" Damien screamed. "Where are you? I'm at a gas station and my cards aren't working. The kids are hungry." I pictured him standing under fluorescent lights, trying to swipe plastic like it was a magic wand, realizing the wand had stopped working. "Are you about 200 meters off the interstate?" I asked calmly. "Near the exit with the old diner sign?" Silence. "My phone location is still sharing with me," I continued. "You forgot to turn it off." His breathing changed, sharp and panicked. "How did you—" "Come home, Damien," I said. "With the kids. We'll handle this properly." "I'm not coming back," he snapped. "My mom will wire me money." "Sure," I said. "But you should know there's an emergency custody hearing Monday morning. If you're not there, it won't go well for you." "You can't do this," he shouted. "I didn't do anything," I said, voice steady. "You took our children across state lines without my consent and without a custody agreement. The court did this." He hung up, and I sat there in Denise's office with my hands folded like I was trying to keep them from shaking. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't petty. It was reality. He wanted to disappear with my kids, and he thought I would beg. Instead, I said, "Drive safe," and called a lawyer, and now the system he was trying to exploit had turned against him. That was yesterday, and I knew when he called again, it wouldn't be to apologize. He made it to his mother's house using money she wired, and I found out the same way I found out most things in that first week, through Denise, through paperwork, through systems that don't care about anyone's feelings. Denise called me the next morning and said, "He's there, and he's already being watched." The parental kidnapping report didn't mean they could arrest him yet, not without a custody order, but it meant local law enforcement knew his name, knew the children's names, knew there was a dispute unfolding across state lines. His plan to vanish quietly had already failed. Damien called me that afternoon like he was doing me a favor. He tried to sound calm, tried to sound like the adult in the room. "The kids are settled," he said. "They're fine. You're overreacting." Nova's voice echoed faintly in the background, asking for snacks. Miles was crying about his blanket. I could hear the chaos he created and the confidence he still clung to. Like if he spoke firmly enough, the world would rearrange itself around him. "I'm not discussing anything on the phone," I told him. "Talk to my lawyer." He scoffed. "So you're really doing this?" "You did this," I replied, and ended the call before he could twist it into another performance. Monday morning came fast. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m., and I barely slept the night before. Not because I doubted the outcome, but because I kept picturing Nova and Miles waking up in an unfamiliar house, hearing adults argue in the kitchen, sensing tension without understanding it. The most brutal part of parental conflict is that kids don't get to opt out. They just absorb it. Denise met me outside the courthouse with a folder thick enough to double as a weapon. She didn't look nervous. She looked focused. "He's appearing by video," she said. "He thinks that makes him smart." Sure enough, when the hearing started, Damien wasn't in the courtroom. His face appeared on a screen, sitting in his mother's living room, like he'd positioned the camera to make the place look warm and stable. He wore a clean shirt and that same cold confidence I'd seen when he packed suitcases. His mother's shadow moved behind him once, and I realized he wasn't alone. He wanted the judge to see support. He wanted to look like the parent with a plan. Judge Hammond didn't care about optics. The judge looked down at the file, looked up at the screen, and said, "Mr. Crowley, you unilaterally removed 2 minor children from their home, their school, and their other parent without any legal authority. Explain yourself." Damien leaned forward, ready. "I'm their father. I'm the primary caregiver. Margot works all the time. The kids need stability." Denise stood and spoke like she was cutting through fog. "Your Honor, Mr. Crowley is not the primary caregiver. Both parents have been actively involved. The children have lived in the same county their entire lives, attended the same schools, and have established routines, medical providers, and support systems here. Mr. Crowley removed them across state lines without consent and without any custody agreement." Damien's mouth tightened. "I didn't kidnap them. I'm their parent." "And Ms. Stickle is their parent too," Judge Hammond said sharply. "Equal parental rights. That is not negotiable." Denise presented the timeline cleanly. The packing, the statement for good, the warning not to follow, the threat about the cop girlfriend, the location-sharing call from the gas station that showed he intended to flee and only panicked when financial access disappeared. Denise didn't dramatize it. She didn't need to. Facts were enough. Judge Hammond issued the temporary order with a calm that felt like thunder. The children were to be returned within 48 hours. Temporary 50-50 custody, pending a full hearing. Damien was prohibited from removing the children from the county without Margot's written consent. Joint assets would remain frozen until division was determined. Damien's face on the screen flickered for the first time, like his confidence had finally found resistance. "That's sexist," he snapped, too quick, too emotional. "Fathers never get taken seriously." Judge Hammond didn't blink. "Not when they kidnap children," the judge said. "Compliance is not optional." I expected that to be the end of it. I expected Damien to realize he'd pushed too far and retreat into damage control. Instead, he doubled down like entitlement was oxygen, and he couldn't survive without it. 2 days later, Denise forwarded me screenshots. Damien had enrolled Nova in school there. He had posted on social media about starting fresh, about protecting my babies, about keeping them away from toxic influence. He didn't name me directly, but he didn't need to. The comments were full of praise for him, full of strangers cheering him on without knowing anything. That's the thing about social media. It rewards the storyteller, not the truth. I documented everything, every post, every timestamp, every enrollment confirmation. Denise's tone hardened. "This is contempt," she said. "He's violating a direct court order. If he doesn't bring them back, we file." Damien called me that night, voice lower, meaner. "You're really going to do this," he said. "You're going to have me arrested in front of the kids." "You're going to get yourself arrested," I replied. "Bring them home." His mother called this next day, and her voice was a weapon. "How dare you financially abuse my son?" she hissed. "He has no money for the kids. You froze everything. You're traumatizing them." "How dare your son take my children across state lines?" I said, and for the first time, my voice wasn't calm. It was clear. "He was ordered to return them. He is choosing not to." She launched into insults I won't repeat, calling me controlling, calling me heartless, calling me the kind of mother who deserves to lose her kids. I listened long enough to hear the truth underneath it. They weren't worried about the children. They were worried about control, about the narrative, about losing the ability to do whatever they wanted without consequence. Thursday morning, Denise called me with the kind of tone that means the next step is no longer optional. "He filed for emergency support and full custody in his mother's state," she said. "It won't work. Our state has jurisdiction, but it proves he's not planning to comply." "So what now?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Now we file contempt," Denise said. "He's violating a court order. That's jail time." I stared at the wall for a long moment, thinking about Nova's face, Miles's hands gripping my leg, the way children cling to stability like it's air. "I don't want him in jail," I whispered. "Then he better bring them back," Denise replied, flat. I called Damien one last time and gave him a deadline. "You have 24 hours, I said. "Bring the kids home, or Denise files contempt charges." "You wouldn't dare," he spat. "You'll traumatize them by having their father arrested." "You traumatize them when you rip them out of their lives," I said. 24 hours. He hung up, and I sat in my quiet house staring at the toys on the floor, waiting to see if he would finally choose the children over his pride. He waited until the last possible moment. 20 hours after my deadline, headlights swept across the front of the house, and Damien's SUV rolled into the driveway like a dare. I stood at the window, heart pounding so hard it felt physical, and watched the doors open. Nova jumped out first and ran straight at me, tears already streaming down her face. "Mom," she cried, wrapping herself around my waist like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. Miles followed, quieter, his small hands clamping onto my leg as if he needed to anchor himself to something real. Damien lingered by the car, arms crossed, jaw tight, looking like a man who wanted credit for doing the bare minimum. "Happy now," he said flatly. "I'm happy my kids are home," I replied, not raising my voice. "This isn't over." He snorted. "You're right. See you at the full custody hearing." The kids barely slept that night. Nova woke up twice, shaking, whispering that Dad had told her they were never coming back and that I was trying to take them away from him. Miles crawled into my bed before sunrise and refused to let go of my arm. That was when the anger finally hit, sharp and focused. Not at him for hurting me, but for using fear as a tool on our children. Damien moved into his friend Carmela's apartment after returning, and the temporary 50-50 custody order kicked in. On paper, it looked fair. In reality, he used every minute of his time to undermine me. The first week, Nova came home asking why I hated Grandma. I knelt down, met her eyes, and explained in the simplest terms I could manage that I didn't hate Grandma at all, but kids need to live where their school is, where their friends are, where their beds are. She nodded, but I could see the confusion swirling behind her eyes. Then he went after the school. He told Nova's teacher that I was financially controlling and that she should call him if the kids needed anything. The teacher called me, confused but professional, asking for clarification. I forwarded the message to Denise and sent the teacher the custody order. The emergency contact list still had me as primary. Damien's attempt fizzled, but the intent was clear. When emotional manipulation didn't get the reaction he wanted, he pivoted to money. Even with the joint assets frozen, he still had access to his part-time income and his mother's credit. Suddenly, his weeks with the kids were full of purchases, new tablets, bikes, toys they'd mentioned once in passing. Miles came home grinning, announcing that Dad's place was more fun because he bought things. Then, softer, almost apologetic, Dad says you're mean with money. I hugged him and kept my voice light. It's nice to have new things, I said. We have fun here too, right? He nodded, but the seed had been planted. Denise was blunt when I told her. He's trying to buy their affection. That's parental alienation. Document everything. The full custody hearing was set for the following month. Damien hired Regina Winters, a lawyer known for scorched earth tactics in family court. Her first move was predictable. She filed a motion accusing me of economic abuse for keeping the assets frozen. At the hearing, Regina argued that Damien needed access to funds for the children. Denise countered by presenting Damien's credit card statements from his personal account, $3,000 in 2 weeks on toys, gadgets, and unnecessary purchases. Judge Hammond raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Crowley appears to have sufficient funds for a $400 rainbow unicorn playset, the judge said dryly. They needed enrichment activities, Regina argued. They have a swing set at Ms. Stickle's house, Denise replied. Motion denied. Assets stayed frozen. After court, Damien confronted me in the hallway, eyes blazing. You're destroying our family. You destroyed it when you tried to kidnap our kids, I said, my voice low and steady. I was protecting them, he snapped, from growing up in a loveless home. So your solution was to traumatize them, I replied. Regina grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away, but he twisted free long enough to hiss, I'll make sure you never see them again. Denise heard every word. She looked at him with something close to satisfaction. Thank you for the ammunition, she said calmly. That night, as I tucked Nova in, she looked up at me with eyes too old for her face. Mom, she asked, why does Dad say you're trying to take us away? I'm not, sweetheart, I said, smoothing her hair. I just want you to have both parents. He says he should have us all the time because he's the dad. What do you think? I asked gently. She thought for a moment. I love you both. I don't want to choose. You don't have to, I told her. That's why judges help figure it out. She nodded, but then added quietly. Dad says judges are mean to dads. The poisoning ran deep. I documented everything. Dates, quotes, changes in behavior, because I could feel it building, the way storms gather when the air turns heavy. And then he crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Everything exploded the week after Damien realized his words were being recorded, not just emotionally, but legally. That was when desperation took over, the kind that makes people stop calculating outcomes and start throwing whatever they have left. On Tuesday morning, while I was at work and the kids were already at school, Child Protective Services showed up at my house. The report claimed I was leaving the children home alone, failing to feed them properly, and keeping them in an unsafe environment. The worker was polite but serious. I didn't panic. I called Denise immediately and followed her instructions exactly. Cooperate fully, she said. You have nothing to hide. The inspection took less than an hour. The fridge was stocked. The pantry was organized. The kids' rooms were clean, their beds made, their backpacks by the door. Safety gates were still up from when Miles was younger, because I'd never gotten around to taking them down. The caseworker checked school attendance records and spoke to the teachers. Both kids arrived clean, fed, homework done. When she finished, she looked at me with a kind of tired sympathy. Ms. Stickle, this appears to be a custody dispute weapon. I see it often. The report will reflect no concerns. Denise was furious in a quiet, surgical way. False CPS reports don't just backfire, she said. They burn credibility. Damien wasn't done. That Thursday, he picked the kids up for his scheduled weekend and didn't take them to school the next day. Monday morning, the school called me. Damien had told them the kids were sick and he was keeping them for extended care. I called him. No answer. I called his mother. "They're fine," she said dismissively. "Damien's taking care of them." Denise filed emergency contempt charges within the hour. Judge Hammond issued an order that afternoon. Return the children immediately or face arrest. Damien tried to argue they were having a mental health week, but he couldn't produce a single doctor's note. The kids were returned that evening. Nova whispered to me that Dad said they were hiding from stress. Miles just looked tired. The full custody hearing was the next day. 4 hours of testimony that felt like standing under a spotlight while your entire life is unpacked by strangers. Regina argued that I was controlling, absent, obsessed with money. Denise presented the CPS report clearing me, school attendance records showing the kids missed 6 days during Damien's weeks and 0 during mine. The police report from the kidnapping attempt and statements from teachers about the children's stability in my home. Then she laid out the financials. I had paid 100% of the children's expenses for 3 months while assets were frozen. Damien had spent thousands on toys while claiming hardship. The final blow was social media. Denise submitted post after post of Damien's mama bear equivalents, rants about toxic influence, and photos captioned "Where we belong," taken out of state after a court order prohibited removal. Regina objected. Judge Hammond overruled without hesitation. The judge looked directly at Damien. "You have shown repeated disregard for court orders, attempted parental alienation, and filed false accusations. You are not prioritizing your children's stability." The ruling was swift. Primary custody awarded to me. Damien received every other weekend supervised for 3 months, parenting classes required, child support calculated by the state, and legal fees ordered to be paid from his portion once assets were unfrozen. He screamed, actually screamed in court, shouting that the system was biased and that I was stealing his babies. Security escorted him out while Regina stood frozen, her strategy reduced to rubble. 3 months later, the dust finally settled. Damien appealed, claimed bias, even tried to have Judge Hammond removed. Every motion was denied. Reality hit when the first child support payment was due. $450. Not much, but after $8,000 in legal fees and a reduced asset split, it hurt. He moved back in with his mother. The supervised visits were rough at first. He cried, blamed me, tried to quiz the kids about my house and schedule. The supervisor shut it down every time. By the 3rd month, something shifted. Not growth, but acceptance. Fighting was expensive and futile. The kids stabilized. Therapy helped. Nova stopped asking why Dad was angry. Miles stopped crying at exchanges. When Damien called about Nova's birthday and asked carefully if he could take her to dinner supervised, I said yes. He paused on the phone. "I still think you're wrong," he said, "but I want to see my kids." "That's all I ever wanted to," I replied. Last month, Nova had a school project about heroes. She wrote about me, not because I'm perfect, but because I make sure they're safe and love them when things are hard. Damien saw it at the school display during a supervised visit. The supervisor later told me he stood there for a long time and then walked away without saying anything. The house is quieter now during his weekends. I use the time to reset, to breathe, to prepare meals for the week. Dating isn't even on my radar. Stability matters more than anything. Damien's supervised period ends next month. Maybe he'll earn more time if he follows the rules. Maybe not. Courts decide that, not pride. I don't hate him. I nothing him. He's the person I co-parent with for the next 13 years. The kids love him, so I support that relationship, but I will never trust him again. And that's the difference between forgiveness and safety. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. Document everything. Don't retaliate. Respond legally, and protect your children's stability above all else. Sometimes, when someone tells you they're taking your kids and leaving, the right response really is drive safe, followed immediately by calling a lawyer.